Hi, I'm John DeDakis. I'm a novelist, a writing coach, a manuscript editor, and a former editor on CNN's The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer. You're one to one with me, and I'm one to one with voice actor Suzanne Cerreta. Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, John. It's so good to be here.
It's good to be with you. And this is the first, I mean, we've worked together off and
Yeah.
on for several years, but it's the first time, I think it's the first time we've ever even talked, much less seen each other face to face.
I know. Yeah, exactly. Most of our communication has been email or messaging. Exactly. Yeah.
However, I could listen to you all day. In fact, I actually have a couple of times because you've narrated my novels, Fast Track and Bullet in the Chamber. You are the voice of Lark Chadwick and every other character I've created.
Yeah.
So you have my deepest sympathy, ma'am. You're very good. You're very good at what you do.
Thank you.
You get Lark.
Thank you. Yeah. It's funny because I think there's a lot of audiobooks that you listen to that are really a little bit, I don't want to say boring, but just, they kind of keep every voice sort of middle of the road, maybe even similar to each other. And not everyone appreciates different character voices and accents and things like that. So it's really fun when you meet an author or a publisher that's really interested in that kind of thing. So that's
So,
fun.
I guess I'm assuming that the different authors that you work with have different preferences about how you're
Yeah,
going to interpret their work.
for sure. Sometimes depending on the genre, but depending on the tone of the book as well, things are going to have a different read. So sometimes if it's, a third person book, you might, so meaning you're in the narration, you're narrating as opposed to um, monologuing as a first person reader, then things are a little bit different, right? So when you're talking about a character that's really the main character, you really kind of have to be like your um like you have its that character's back. Like you're kind of its, you know, uh kind of guiding principle or nurturing that character. And you might even have an opinion about another character that's maybe the antagonist. So it's interesting. It's a different vibe. But some publishers, some authors maybe want things to be really steady,
Mm.
really oops, sorry. Um that's another thing. I talk with my hands, which sometimes makes some
You
weird
do
sounds.
do you use your hands when you're narrating?
Oh, yeah.
Do you really?
Yeah, but I have to do it in a certain space, right? So I'm like, and then blah blah blah. Like sometimes I'm right because sometimes I will flub on a line
Uh-huh.
and I'll have to say it like six times because I'm like, why am I flubbing? Or sometimes lines are long and you have to really get the breath, almost like you're singing
Mhm,
like a piece of
mhm,
music. So there are times when I have to, and then
mhm.
whenever blah 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 did it, and I have to kind of use my hands to in a way conduct my rhythm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you stand when you do it?
Depend sometimes. So usually I don't sit here. I have a like an acoustic booth that I set up that's it's portable.
Mhm.
So you can maybe I think it's over here. You can kind of see this like these
Can
like sticks that are sticking up, that the silver thing, that's
hold
part of
on.
my booth. And then
Oh,
yes,
there, I see it. Yeah, there it
over
is.
here, this
Uh-huh.
thing. So that is kind of you open it up and it's like a
Ah.
big canopy. It's like a 3 by 3 room. And I have these acoustic blankets and soundproof stuff to put on my windows. And so I kind of make like a home booth because I don't really have a lot of closet space here where a lot of actors will make like a booth in their closet. So I have to kind of create my closet. Um, and I have a carpet on the ground. So it's good. I have good tone. But now I've totally lost my train of thought.
Well,
Standing.
we're
So in there, I
uh,
stand usually.
uh-huh.
But then sometimes if it's, I'm working for a few, for 4, 5, 6 hours in there, I'll bring a stool. So I have like a high stool. So I'm kind of like sort of sitting, leaning, you know what I mean? But I
Mhm.
like to have um the option to stand or to sit. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
My goodness. There's so many questions I have. Um, and you'll know the answer to all of them because you do this professionally. Um, you teach actors. You do many things, but one of the things you do is you teach actors how to do dialects and accents.
Mhm.
How do you approach that? And I guess probably let me zero in on this question. What's the biggest impediment that an actor faces in trying to get an accent or a dialogue right?
To be honest, there's probably 2 things. One, it's just that they've told themselves that they are bad at accents, and
Psychological. It's
it's
psychological.
totally psychological. A lot of it is like, "I don't know what I'm doing, I'm scared, I've never done this before, I'm bad at accents," right? And how do they know they're bad at accents? Probably, like, maybe their uncle or somebody who's from Boston is like, "Do a Boston accent," and then they're like, or whatever, or like from, Geordie or something, and they're like, "Do a Geordie accent," and then they're like, "Oh god," and they freak out. So, that's not a good place to learn or do accents when you're under pressure and you have to do it just on the spot. Um, it's better to just give yourself a break, breathe, take a second, have a session with a coach, slowly get into it, feel the different aspects of the accent, the vocal positions, the posture in your vocal tract and the sound changes and play with it. So that's the first big thing is just the fact that people have negative thinking, stinking thinking. The second thing, I think that's most things though, right? I feel
Oh,
like
absolutely. That's true of writing too.
I feel like that's the impediment for, like, cooking, writing, anything creative for sure. The second thing is that people don't most people get afraid or feel a little bit awkward when they start to hear their voice change into something else. So, say, I speak like this is my natural voice. And then what if I really am, like, starting to talk like this, And, like, because it's I'm sort of afraid of, like, hearing myself talk like this, that I might kind of, like, try to make it not so intense, right? Like, I don't want it to sound too cartoony or too much. So and it's kind of shocking to hear myself in that accent, and then I start to veer off the track.
Mhm.
And the thing is that get once people start to time on task, right? The more they do it, the more they are getting used to hearing themselves in that altered accent.
But
So
we don't always hear ourselves accurately in our own head, correct?
I think we do. It's just that with accent, I think w- I mean, I don't know. I don't feel like I hear myself differently. And I say that because I've done so much recording and I've had to listen to my voice over and over and over again. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes I'm like, "Oh gosh, I don't wanna hear myself anymore." So I feel like I've gotten used to and I've closed that gap a little bit,
Mhm.
whereas maybe with people who haven't listened to their voice on a regular basis, they'll hear themselves and go, "Oh my gosh, that's what I sound like?
Right.
Ah." So I think there's maybe a little bit of a learning curve with that, getting used to hearing your voice, and I tell my students all the time, "Record yourself." I have them record themselves and send it to me, or I have an app I use. I use Marco Polo to, record, it's a video messaging app so I can see and hear them, which is great. And then I can always go back and listen to the recording, and then they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, I did do that. Oh, yeah." Like, "See?" So, it really helps to be able to, um, yeah, listen to yourself and not be afraid to sound weird and kind of shocking to yourself, and yeah.
How did you get into this in the first place? Because you have a passion for this and you have,
Yeah.
quite a skill for it. Where
Yeah.
did this come from? How did it come about?
So, again, maybe it's because I'm a Gemini. My birthday's next week,
Oh,
so I
my daughter is too.
yeah, yeah. And so, I maybe I always like to have a double answer. Maybe that's why I always have a double answer, but, um, I 2 things really. The first is that my grandparents are from Italy, um, and so my mom is first generation American, and my grandparents are from Italy and came to New York City and, the American dream.
What
And
year
I
would
think
that have been?
oh gosh, I wanna say it may have been like 1949.
Okay.
I wanna say it was like, yeah, after World War II.
After the war, yeah.
Yeah. They so they, um, they have an accent. They still have an accent. They're still alive. They're 93 and 94.
Wow.
God bless 'em. Um,
And did you pick
and
it up? Did you pick it up as a kid? I mean, did you have
yeah,
to
so I found that whenever I imitated them, that I was funny. As a kid, I would imitate them, and then I would get attention, and then everyone would be like,
Ah.
"Wow, that's really good. Wow, that's a really good impression," and I would do my grandmother, I'd be like, "Suzanne, eat the bread, Suzanne. Oh, just eat the bread," or like, "Suzanne, why you no eat the mozzarella?" And doing like their voices really. It's not just their accents, but like the idiolect. So like the character voice, the idiolect, that's what it's called. And yeah, so when I found that whenever I did my grandparents, my family would laugh and they would be
Mhm.
like, "That's so good." So did it a lot. So I think I kind of trained that muscle. The other thing is that when we moved from New York City to Texas when I was like 11, and I think I just turned 11 or 12. Anyway, um, I was not cool. Okay. I mean,
And that's
I was
culture
cool
shock.
in New York,
That's culture shock.
total culture shock. So like I think if I moved maybe sorry, sometimes I just give you a thumbs up. That's how it goes.
Okay.
Um what this I think it's my computer does that whenever my it sees my thumb
Well,
hanging down.
it could be one of our viewers too.
Maybe. But, yeah, when I moved to Texas, I talk like this. I was like, "Let's go to the mall. Where's a dog?" Like this sort of thing, like,
The
totally like
dog.
that.
The
The dog.
dog.
Yeah, like, what are you talking about? Like, whatever. Barbie dolls. I played with Barbie dolls. And, so when I moved to Houston, well, spring, really, I didn't fit in, and I was, like 11, 12 years old, which is scary when you don't fit in, so I changed my accent quickly. I kind of glommed onto these 2 friends, and then I just listened to them and mimicked them until it became my own voice, and I think
Is it
that
different? Is it different? Is there is Texas an accent from Texas different than a Southern accent?
yeah, so there's so many Southern accents.
What's the Texas one that you adopted as a young kid?
Well, it might be unrecognizable as a Texas accent. It's really subtle. Like, what I did was kinda just so I was like the dog, like, talk like this, like, everything was really like that, like,
Mhm,
whatever, like, my father, my mother, like this.
mhm.
And then I had more energy in my mouth a little bit. I rounded my word vowels a little bit more, and I kinda clipped it in the back of my throat, kinda like excuse me, kind of like a little not valley girl, but, like, a little bit like I kinda had this kinda thing going, like the mall, and I kinda, like, did this, and it wasn't like it wasn't like a Southern accent like you would really hear and go, "Oh, that's rural Southern." It wasn't like that thick like
Mhm,
this,
mhm,
though I
right.
had teachers and maybe other people that did, but that did speak that way. Um, it was kind of like this. It was like a little bit more like, "I'm gonna go, like, to the mall and whatever like this, more like this." Like, "That's awesome." And so I really kind of rounded it a bit more, and I just took on a little bit of that
It's like
coloring.
being a chameleon.
Totally, I totally yeah, but it was out of survival. I mean, you're like an 11-year-old girl moving from Brooklyn, New York to Spring, Texas. It's like, "Okay, I have to sound like everybody else."
And once you were able to, in a sense, morph into, that dialect, did things change socially?
Yeah, totally.
In what way?
Yeah, yeah, I fit in more. I nobody knew I was from New York. No one knew. And what's funny is nowadays when I say, "Yeah, I'm from New York," people are like, "Oh, wow, that's so cool." But as a kid in Texas in, like, the early '90s, that wasn't cool. It was like,
Right.
"Where is that?" Like, "That's weird." Like, "Where's that?" That's like, "Is that like the Yankees?" And I was like, "What? Why? I don't like the Yankees." I'm still a Mets fan, so
So here's another question. If you are so good at being able to adapt vocally to the setting that you might
yeah.
be in, does that in any way impact a sort of a sense of who am I?
Well, I don't think so. I think it's a choice, right? There's actually a linguistic theory called the accommodation theory, and it's really about that, where you sort of accommodate someone else by um, changing the way you speak or language that you speak, or by kind of pushing them away and being to remain different and to create that boundary. You see it with politicians, right? When a politician who speaks maybe like me and you, like kind of non-regional, and then
Right.
all of a sudden they go to the South and they're like, "Y'all, I'm so happy to be here." And you're like, "What? You
Right.
just put on like suddenly you're from the South now?" You know? And you see that. So it's it's a way of accommodating to become part of the group or to distance yourself from the group. And the thing is, it's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's just something that may happen. I think that is more of a psychological linguistics thing. Like, you need to maybe maintain your, um, you know, personality and I guess identity so that you for me, it was really like a fake it till you make it kind of thing.
Uh-huh. But
Um,
but it's also a way to build, in a sense, build bridges and relate.
totally. Yeah. I mean, here where I am in Montreal, that's the
The map behind you.
map behind me. We're a bilingual city and it's really prevalent here, this accommodation theory. Some people will say, "No, I'm not going to speak English to you." Or some people may say, "You know what? Yeah, that's great. Let's speak English." Or, you may choose to speak French or choose not to speak French or to speak with a certain accent. Um, and that really shows your allegiance
Does
to
this does
the
this
group.
mean you're good at foreign languages as well?
I don't know if I'm good. I mean, I don't know. That's a really good question. I feel like I've sort of plateaued with my French. I would love to have an official class. I've never really had an official class. I just sort of picked it up as I went along. And so I'm fine. I can get along and have a conversation and deal with things, but
I flunked French twice, I think.
it's hard.
No, it is,
It is hard. Yeah.
and I mean, my wife is a choral conductor, so she's taken a lot of, well, she's good with foreign languages, but
Yeah.
part of it is being able to teach the choir how to say this in Latin or German or Italian, just the right way of doing it.
Yeah.
And so you could probably, if you were to read, if you were to narrate something in French, you'd probably sound pretty authentic, I would think.
Well, I don't know if I don't think I could narrate in French, but
You could do an accent though.
right, I could do the accent in English, right? I could do the French accent in English. What's challenging is to speak like a native speaker of a different language. Like people always so just to back up, people always say, "Oh, but it's not hard. I mean, there's actors all the time that do like, Kate Winslet will do an American accent." I'm like, "Yeah, but she's an English speaker. She's just she's British speaking English. It's the
Right.
same phonological constraints. She's not speaking a different language." If you are a Spanish speaker use your first language and then you speak English as an adult and you've learned it as an adult and you're having this pressure to speak like a native speaker and sound like you're American, that's really hard to do because it's a whole different phonological like alphabet in a sense. Not I don't want to get confused with alphabet, but like
Yeah.
it's like the rules are just totally different, right?
So how would you explain what you're explaining now to me in a French accent?
Oh, if it depends kind of where you want me to be from in France, but like this is kind of my regular French accent. It's like I don't really have a terribly thick one, but it's I can still do like a th, but maybe I don't know. I would kind of be like that, and I'm going to have a foie gras tonight for dinner. It would be really, really nice. Uh, I don't know.
Okay. So, let me go back to when you were growing up
Kidding. I'm not
mimicking
gonna have foie gras.
when you were mimicking, the family, the thick Italian accent, is that
Yeah.
what also got you into acting?
Um, maybe accents kinda did get me into acting. I actually I was a dancer, actually, since I was 1.5 years old, I danced and was very, um, committed to dance. I did a lot of, um, competitions, like, when you saw, like, Dance Moms, like, I did a lot of, like, that reality TV show where they go on a lot of competitions. I did that. I was always in competition and always, dancing, like, 6 days a week. It was very intensive.
Mm,
Then when I moved to Texas, a friend of mine dragged me to the high school play audition, and it happened to be The Importance of Being Earnest, and I could do accents well. So I auditioned and I just was like, "Sure, I'll get up and do it. If that looks like fun." And I just read the monologue in a British accent, and the head of the acting program was like, "That was really good." And then he asked me to be in the ensemble and to do plays. So, yeah.
it's sort of like once you're affirmed in something that you're good at and you're passionate about,
Yeah.
things just happen.
I think so. I really do think so, and it just kind of, you know, um, I never really had a doubt in my mind. I always was like, "Yeah, this is right. This is fun. This feels right." And I just sort of followed that path. Um, yeah.
Tell me about being on Law& and Order. What was that like?
That was good. So, that's funny. I was just talking about it with a friend of mine this weekend. I think it was I was with Michael Imperioli,
Mhm.
um, when he was on it, and is it Messina? What was the
You're
name?
you're you're assuming I know the show really well.
Yeah. So this was Original Recipe, Law& and Order. It wasn't like SVU or anything like that, and, Michael Imperioli was just the nicest guy on set. He was just super cool, super nice, made me feel very comfortable. Um, but the other gentleman was maybe a little bit challenging. He made me very nervous.
Oh
Um,
dear.
but it was fine. It was like what I had maybe like I think at the time I had like 10 lines and I think they cut it down to like 6 or I don't know, like something less.
Was
So
it
I
a whole day shoot? Was it a whole day shoot?
was night. Yeah, it was a whole night.
What kind
Yeah.
of character did you play?
Um, just like a Lower East Side chick from she's like a she was part of like the gentrification, honestly, of the Lower East Side. Um, they actually I wore I dressed up like for the part when I auditioned, and then they just were like, "Can you wear your clothes that you wore to the audition?" I was like, "Sure." But they pay you when they use your clothes. But it was yeah. Yeah, that was funny. So, um yeah. Yeah, it was fun. It was a little chilly, I'll tell you what. They were giving us, like, feet warmers and hand warmers,
What
'cause we were outside.
what year would this have been, and how could
Oh my
people find it? Do you
gosh.
remember what season and episode?
Yeah, I think this episode I actually do know the name of it because I was on a podcast, a Law& and Order podcast. Oh, no, no, no. Yeah, yeah, it was a Law& and Order podcast. Called These Are Their Stories. It's really funny. And it's called Sport of Kings. That's what it is. Sport of Kings. And it was, I don't remember the year. It was definitely in the 2000s, probably like the mid late 2000s. So it was a long time ago.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, yeah, that's the episode. Yeah, it was the original one. Like,
Congratulations.
yeah.
And then you went it was downhill from there because you went and, this is a same shameless self-promotion.
Yeah,
You've just completed the narration of Fast Track, the audiobook, which is, my first novel, and, you do a great job. This book is in demand because it's the beginning of the series,
yeah,
and people like to begin a series at the very beginning, and
yeah.
people like to read it. And you really get Lark. What is it about Lark that resonated with you?
I I thought she was just really real. I think you know, she starts out in a she has a very clear arc, I think. And she starts out in a very rough position, but also there's kind of a bit of that angst, that like young, like leftover teenage angst that she has going on, and she doesn't really know where to put it, and she doesn't really totally know how to process her emotions. And I mean, what she's gone through is quite difficult. So that's, not easy for anyone. No, never mind a 20 something year old. But it feels like, um, she really finds herself and her path and learns by getting out of her comfort zone, and and like kind of putting all that emotion into solving something, solving and
You're really good about not giving away spoilers. Thank you
yeah,
very
I
much.
don't want to give away spoilers. So I'm like being
I
vague, but
I can save this. I can say this much. It starts out. Lark's backstory is that she's sexually assaulted by an English professor, and she's a senior, and she drops out of college to write the great American novel. She's working as a server at a restaurant. She gets another rejection. She's pretty down, and the book begins where she goes home to talk to her aunt who raised her from infancy because her parents were killed in a car accident. But she finds the aunt dead of carbon monoxide poisoning, obvious suicide. And so that launches Lark on a search to find out more about her past. So she goes to the small town in southern Wisconsin where the accident happened, gets a newspaper clipping, and discovers she's the miracle baby who survived a car train collision, and no one had ever told her about that. And so she convinces the newspaper editor to let her do a follow up. Two of her sources are the mayor and the sheriff. They're running against each other for Congress. The election is 1 week away, and each guy has a secret that will unravel the mystery. Duh, duh, duh.
Yeah.
And I took the picture of the. This is a scene from the novel where Lark has a showdown with a freight train, and I was lying on the tracks to take this shot. Most of the shots I took we weren't able to use because they were too blurry. I was jumping out of the way all the time, but what we won't do for our art, right? And
Oh my god.
in this case, though, the train, full disclosure, had stopped, and the engineer let me lie down and get the shot. And I think it's awesome,
Yeah.
but that's just me. And
Yeah.
my cousin Christine Gannis designed the cover, and I'm speaking with Suzanne Cerreta, who is the voiceover artist for not only Fast Track but also Bullet
Yeah.
in the Chamber. And this was our first time working together. Bullet is my fourth novel, and by this time, you mentioned Lark's arc, so to speak. Lark,
Yeah.
by this time, is a White House correspondent, which is my background, and this is more personal. My youngest son Stephen died of a heroin overdose, and when he was missing, I woke up from a dream with the image of a bullet in the
Mm.
syringe, and I wanted to capture in my book the powerfulness, the Russian roulette powerfulness of heroin addiction. And so Bullet in the Chamber, though it's a thriller about, president geopolitics and stuff like that, the subplot dealing with Lark and, her life, there's heroin addiction in it. And it was a catharsis to be able to write it and take some of Stephen's story and pour it into the backstory there. And, Suzanne did a fabulous job of bringing Lark to life in this one as well. It was a long time ago when you did this one.
Yeah.
Do you remember much about it?
Yeah, I do,
Yeah.
I do, I do. And, it's funny because when I, going back to the, fast track, I wanted to make sure that voices stayed consistent,
Hmm.
and so I did listen to parts of, Bullet in the Chamber as well, so, like, I was able to kind of refresh my memory a little bit, and, oh, yeah," you know? So, yeah. Yeah, 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 it was very moving, and I remember you telling me that story about, your son, and, that really touched me, and yes, it's very powerful. That image is very powerful, and I think the story is as well.
Thank you. How do you approach doing male voices?
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge, but I think it's really, just to get technical about it, I do some work that I've done, or studying singing, in the Estel method talks about how we can change the shape of our vocal folds to elicit a different sound.
Hmm.
So, for example, when you want to have something that's really breathy or high pitched and breathy, your vocal folds are very thin, and stretched. When you want to do something that's maybe you're leaning into more of a how like a vocal fry type of voice, your vocal folds are slack, right? So they're kind of relaxed, and so the vibration is slower. They're not as taut. And so I kind of
That's a breath control thing, right?
yeah, it is. It's also a tense and relaxation thing as well as breath at the same time. Totally. But if you think about like if you kind of lift your palate and you're like, "Ah, ah," like you're gonna yawn, that's really stretching them, making them very long.
Hmm.
Or if you're singing in a higher pitch or you're speaking in a higher pitch, there's a bit more of a stretch to the vocal folds. Whereas if you're bringing your larynx down and you're kind of like leaning into, like a vocal fry,
Hmm.
then you're creating that slack
Mhm.
vocal folds, and what is happening there, men tend to have that, like, that sound, well, it helps me to reach that sound. It
Mhm.
helps me to reach that, timbre and that pitch range, to kind of lean into that vocal fry.
Yeah, I wanna ask you about vocal fry because
Yeah.
that's a thing, and it's terrible for your voice, right?
Yes and no. There's a misconception. It actually can be good for your voice if you're doing it correctly and you're doing it with intention to for like a vocal exercise. If you're doing it where you're kind of glottalizing a lot and it's like you're pushing your voice and you're sitting on your vocal folds, it's not like with not enough breath support,
Mhm.
basically, it's not good.
And
If you're
why
doing
do people do vocal fry? Is it an affectation?
I think it's really underdeveloped breath support. I think it's the diaphragm is not working as much.
Okay,
People aren't breathing.
but did teenage girls do vocal fry in the '40s?
Um, I mean, we can get into a whole, like, social conversation. I mean, I think in the '40s, the like, the voice that is, attractive was a high-pitched, very, like, mid-Atlantic, which is very open and very round, right? Like, this sort of voice, like people on in the movies, they kind of talk all like this, right? So I
Mhm.
feel like there's different levels. L
It's
It
a
wasn't socially
socialization, it's a social
acceptable. Right.
right.
It
Marilyn
wasn't
Monroe and that breath and stuff.
right, and I think
Can you do a
that's
Marilyn Monroe?
oh, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know about that, but I do think that there's, like, a generalization there. I mean, I'm sure there was, vocal fry. I mean, if you even look at Katharine Hepburn had sort of like, after a while, she was kind of here. So that is a bit of vocal fry. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, I do think it existed. It's just that the attractive voice,
Mhm.
and I say that with air quotes, that I should do them, is it was that kind of open and almost sing-songy, high-pitched voice, right? Where it's like, I'm a lovely lady," right? Where
Elegant.
yeah, whatever that means.
No.
But it's that it was very gendered, it was very like, well, this is how a woman speaks, and this is how a man speaks, and I think now there's so many gray areas that and we can also get into now as more and more people come out as trans too, there's vocal training for moving into another voice, into a different pitch range, into a different timbre, right?
Mhm.
There's coaching
Hmm.
regarding that. Social
Have you done any of that?
I have not. No, that's my training is not in that, but
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
I mean, my training is in voice work, but I've never that would just wasn't I've never been asked, so maybe I will. Um, who knows?
Yeah.
But there you see what I'm saying though is that there's so many layers and the social aspect really does play a role, in
Right,
what's
right.
acceptable, what's revered, what's not acceptable. Yeah.
Okay, well, I wanna pivot to the memoir that you're writing because obviously
Yeah.
you've got a lot of experience, professionally, but, memoirs can be very personal, and, I know you've gone through a hell of a lot in the last
Yeah.
couple of years, and, I would imagine that you're digging deep, and tell me a little bit about the memoir in terms of, what inspired it, how the process is going, all that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it really was inspired by my way of kind of almost like mental health for therapeutic reasons, for
Mhm,
me to get things on paper, as a form of therapy and to move through and process emotions. Um, I went through a baby loss. I we In 2017 we lost our daughter at I was 7 months pregnant, so it was a stillbirth.
Mm.
And right, like losing a child at any age is just the worst. It's the worst
It
thing.
really is. It really is.
And it was totally just, I mean, devastating. And one day this essay just sort of poured out of me, and then I've been editing it and that kind of thing, and then I joined a writers group, and they've been very encouraging, like, "Keep going, okay." So then I've been creating, a series of essays around my experience prior to, um, these last 7 years. So it's kind of about these last 7 years of which has really been my 40s. Like, my 40s have been just pretty tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so after I went through, we lost our baby, I had a miscarriage on my birthday, and then I was diagnosed with breast cancer, like, a few months later, and, um went through that, then COVID hit, like,
Mm.
the right
Shit.
like, a few months later, and then I had a recurrence of breast cancer and then found out I had ovarian cancer, and so and now we're still on our baby journey. We're actually working on, finding a surrogate
Mm.
and, having a family through that, which God willing, that happens. So it's been, so it's really about that and have and what it takes to kind of get through those things, moving
In what
through it.
and right, in what way has the writing been therapeutic?
It's it's therapeutic to kind of get it out of my head and it's on paper, and I what to be honest, it's having my writers group and allowing them to help me edit so that I don't have to reread and reread and reread it, but allow them to sort of help me with that. And so that I can maybe, subtract maybe 5 or 6 less times I need to read it and re traumatize myself. And
Exactly.
then, yeah. And then as people read what I've written and help me to edit and the like, they say, "Wow, this is gonna help so many people. This has helped me.
Mm.
I thank you for writing this. This has really inspired me." Like, no one I lost a child, and no one's ever like, I've never talked about it with anyone or, um yeah, so
Mm.
I feel like helping other people is what
Wow.
is inspiring me to do that.
Several people, I mean, I talk about my son a lot in my writing classes. It's part of who I am.
Yeah.
And people say, "Oh, you're so courageous." I don't feel courageous. Do you?
No,
And why not? How
because people say that when they haven't gone through the thing, the most devastating thing,
yeah.
losing a child, whatever that is, losing a parent, losing someone that you love, excuse me, a divorce, like whatever, we all are gonna go. No one's gonna leave this earth unscathed,
That's right.
right? We are all going to have grief or pain. But if someone hasn't totally gone through that, like, horrible devastation, I feel like they don't necessarily know. Sorry, I need to just grab some water.
Okay. We're talking with Suzanne Cerreta. She's a voiceover artist. She's the narrator of two of my mystery suspense thriller novels, and she's writing a memoir.
Oh,
And she's
yeah.
coughing, and she's
Mhm.
and
I'm
she's
talking.
trying to
I'm
take
talking a
care of
lot.
her voice. I'm making you talk so much. It's all my
It's okay.
fault.
It's just today is awful. It's very windy today, and so I think The allergies are just, like, off the charts.
Oh dear.
It's been a little, like, allergy-ish today. Um,
So
excuse
we're
me.
talking about being courageous, and
Yeah.
you've put into words for the first time why I don't feel particularly courageous. It's and I've never really analyzed it, but obviously you have.
I think I think it's like, John, I you did what you had to do to get through.
Right.
That's all you know, right? Like, w I can't see it any other way. I have to go through, grieve, and also stay positive and be joyful because that's my nature. I can't if I go in the other direction, I won't get through. So
Right.
in order to survive, you it may on the outside look like it's courage, but it's just like that's the only choice right now.
Yeah, it's a survival thing.
It's survival. Yeah.
Do you think that temperament has anything to do with it? Extrovert versus introvert, anything like that? You meant y y I get the impression that you're much more of an extrovert.
Yeah, I am, I am. I am. I have, like, introvert tendencies, maybe. I've been doing, pottery for, like, the last year, and, I it definitely feeds my introvert part of myself where I can just, like, put on the headphones and
Chill,
play
yeah.
with some clay. Um, um, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, definitely, I think it's more about how we process emotions. I process by with words, whether it's writing, whether it's talking, I process that way. There are people who process on their own, when we lost our baby, my husband processes things very differently. He will be more internal. Needs space, needs a little bit more alone time. And me, I like maybe that's extrovert, maybe that's just my emotional process. I have to talk and, work
Right,
through it in
right.
that way.
And one of the things I discovered about grief is that, um, Cindy and I instinctively, without even talking about it, just knew that we were gonna have to get our support from someplace else. That,
Yeah.
the
Yep.
a lot of marriages don't survive because, one spouse, you're comparing your grief to the other, snap out of it, you should be farther along, and,
Yeah,
that's
you
just not
should
helpful.
want to talk about it more, or you
Yeah.
should be doing this, and the truth is everyone handles things differently and different situations differently, right? I may wanna talk a lot about one thing, but something else I might wanna just keep it to myself. Usually I talk a lot about everything, but I agree, and I think, one of the things that really helped us, just to share this, maybe it'll hit someone's, help somebody. I tended to talk a lot and process out loud, and my husband didn't. And so when he would come home from work, the days, and months, like a month or so following our loss, we would set a timer for 30 minutes and we'd like whatever have some water or seltzer or like a beer, whatever we needed to do, and I would get 15 minutes to talk about how I was feeling in my day, and then he would. And what that did is it kind of gave me a smaller container, a more structured container, and then for him it kind of drew him out to fill those 15 minutes. And so it gave us this safe space. And then once it was over, doesn't mean we couldn't go back to it if we needed to, but at least that was our moment to deal.
How did you come
And
up with that idea?
it just came up for me. I don't know why. Sometimes I'm resourceful. I'm a teacher at heart, I'll be like, oh, this is a good exercise.
Uh-huh. So did you do the and this look, this is me being curious and asking inappropriate questions
That's
that you
okay.
don't have to answer, but we
Yeah.
certainly have an emotional,
Yeah.
resonance. But
Totally.
I mean, did you
Totally.
go through grief counseling?
We did do couples, well, it was like a support group for couples who lost, you know,
Right.
perinatal loss. So that was, interesting. We did that for maybe, 2 months, I guess, like, once a week. Um, and then, to be honest, I don't love group counseling. I
Why
get to
why
a
not? I
point.
think I know why, but,
Yeah, I get to a point where, like, when new people come in, I just get re-triggered, and I'm already moved on, and I need to be in a place that's, like, at my pace, and
yeah,
I'm now heal and I'm a very empathetic person, and so I tend to, like, wanna take care. I'm like, then I start being there for them, and I'm like, "Wait a minute, I have to be here for me, like, I gotta
right.
heal this." So, yeah, there was a point where I needed to move on and kind of, okay, now I wanna, like, I don't know, take a dance class, or now I need to
Mhm.
write, and now I need to paint. I needed to do something more proactive instead of sitting in a circle and, like, regurgitating the pain,
Yeah.
if
Was
that
the
makes
is
sense.
the yeah, it makes perfect sense, and one of the things Cindy and I discovered is that, in our grief counseling situation, they wanted us to go through it separately as opposed to
Okay.
as a couple, because each individual has so much stuff
Yeah.
that, and so that's the way we did it. When is the
I had
memoir
pri I had my own. I had my own also. I saw a social worker, and yeah,
same
so
here.
but it was in French, and it was so hard
Oh my goodness.
to like, my French got really good during that period because I had to express myself, and it was so hard to express myself in French under those circumstances, and there was a point where there were moments in the counseling where I would just say, I'm about to speak some English, like, I have to."
Yeah, yeah,
Sorry.
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
I just need to get it out in my language. Anyway, yeah.
Is the writing of the memoir, is that the first time you've really attempted to really seriously write anything, or have you always been a writer?
No, I think I've always been a writer, but I never had the, confidence that I do with my performing. Um,
Why is
so
that?
I don't know. It's because everyone's always, I feel like writers are these, like, very bookish, like, they read a lot, and they know all the facts, and they know all the things, and they use the big
Exactly. Oh,
words and
totally, yes.
whatever, and I'm like, "Meh, meh." Um, I've written plays, screenplays. I've also, I started in at Carnegie. This is funny. At Carnegie Mellon, I took a poetry class as an elective, and um, I did really well in that class. And I was leaving. I remember leaving the class, and Dr. Costanzo, he said, he's like, so wait, he's like, before you go, he's like, you're gonna be an actor. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be an actor. And then he's like, oh, well, that's too bad. And I was like, "Okay." Like, "You grumpy much?" I was like, "Whatever." And he was like, "Because you're a really good writer, so that's too bad." And I was like, "Okay, okay." I was like, "Gotta go." I just felt, like, really awkward. I
But
didn't
it
know
stayed
what to
with it, but
say.
it stayed
It's
with you. Yeah.
totally. And I actually contacted him years later. I
Mhm.
found his email, and I emailed him, and I was like, "Do you remember ever saying this to me?" And he's like, "Huh." He's like, he's like, "Oh, I probably was just mad because my daughter wanted you're about the same age as my daughter, and my daughter wanted to be an actress." And I was like, "Phooey on actors," or whatever. And I was like, "So, but did you mean that I was a good writer?" Like, I kinda was
Yeah,
like, "Did you
yeah,
mean it?" He
yeah.
was like he's like, "I wouldn't have said it if I didn't mean it. I don't say that kind of thing to people." So I was like, "Okay." Because I was starting to write more, and I was doubting myself. I wrote, I've never rewritten or but I did write a fiction novel, but I never revised it. I
Mhm.
never let it, become anything.
Did you think it was any good?
Well, I was like, it's fine. And then a friend of mine sent it to another friend because it was like this kind of science fiction, um, like young adult, dystopian kind of world, back in the day. It was like,
Sure.
in like the 2011, 12. Um, and he the friend his her friend loved it so much, and he's like, When am I gonna get the rest of it?" Because it was only, like, the first half or, like, the
Uh-huh.
first, you know,
Wow.
chunk. And he's like, "I gotta know how it ends."
Yeah. Does your memoir have a title yet?
Um, n I have a working title.
Which
So I
is
have each of my essays have a title.
okay.
And the one that's about the baby is called Unrooted.
Mm.
Unrooted. But the book as a whole right now, and maybe it's a dumb title, I feel a little bit vulnerable sharing it, but it's simply through.
Mm.
Because it's for
Where does
me
that come from? Where does that
getting
come
through. Yeah, it's
from?
like because I think
Mm.
just what you said about, like, are we really courageous? It's about walking through, not staying still and getting burned inside of the fire of it all, but walking through it and passing through and allowing the fire to kind of, like a diamond, right? Like, shape you into something better and walk through it.
I wonder if
Um,
it has a double meaning.
maybe, maybe. I'll have to think about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, let me ask this. How are you different now than you were in 2016 before all this started to happen?
Oh my gosh. Well, I definitely wasn't in menopause, that's for sure. I was not having hot flashes. And I definitely had my real breasts and, like, not lymphedema and all that stuff. But um I don't think I was as present.
What do you mean?
I think I'm more present. I think the fact that I have to have blood tests every month and I have to face it every single month and I have to be a little, like, on pins and needles. And I think I say no to things more. I think I take my time more. I'm more present in the moment. I go slower. I stick up for myself, and I'm not afraid. I just, can I say bad word?
Yes, you can.
Mhm. I just
Safe.
don't have I have less fucks to give, you know what I'm
There
saying?
you go. Yes, yes. Well
Yeah.
said. Okay.
I just yeah, I am just, like, gonna I feel it what's funny is that I don't have my breasts anymore. I mean, I have reconstruction. I don't have my uterus and fallopian tube, I had a hysterectomy. I don't have my belly button anymore. I mean, I look like I'm sewn together, and yet I feel more whole inside.
How does one get to that point?
I think it's, for me, it's processing my feelings and honoring them and, like, loving yourself,
Is that
you
hard?
know?
Is that hard?
Yeah.
Because
Sometimes.
why?
Why is it hard to love yourself?
Yeah.
I think it's hard when you look back, at pictures and things, and you see yourself so different, like, physically, body, not being able to, um not having control. I don't have control over things. You see, like, okay, I was eating really good and I exercise and this still happened to me. Like, there's no rhyme or reason. I mean, I happen to have the genetic mutation. That's why this happened, cancer-wise. But it's really, I think it's hard sometimes because, we're when y I don't know how to put this. It's like when you go through something like that, like going through cancer a couple times, you feel, okay, I'm for a while you're like this cancer patient. And then it starts to move away because you're in remission and it's it's further and further away from you. So you start living in the norm in regular life. But then there are those doctor's appointments and things that kind of pull you back into cancer world, and then you're normal again, and then you're cancer world, and then you're normal again. And so there's this kind of it, I guess it's hard to love yourself when you see yourself broken, right? Or that you're not what you thought you were, or um that you are not everyone else can just be normal and have their family and their life and everything, and you're kind of different, so it's that can be really challenging. But I think processing those emotions, get angry, cry it out, like do what you need to do to go through and to accept and to be like, okay, but look what I do have. Like, this is pretty great. I have other things that as well.
Give me a sense of how long something like this takes to get to a point where, I mean, obviously it's it's always there,
Yeah.
and yet you are at a point where you're very articulate about it. You're very well, you use the word mindful and present, but that's not an instant process. And at what point from when the initial shock of losing the child to how long did it take for you to start feeling in any way normal, or I'm not even sure normal is the right word, but at a point
Yeah.
where you felt as if things were at least beginning to change for uh, in toward hopefulness? And again, I feel like I'm putting
Yeah.
words in your mouth. So,
Well, I mean, the thing is they say that it takes like 2 years to grieve when you've had a stillborn, like a stillbirth. Um, and after the first year, I then was diagnosed with breast cancer. So didn't like I almost like didn't have that full time. Because I was like, okay,
mm,
survival mode. Like okay, this is what we're doing.
right.
So it wasn't until I would say after, to be honest, this is gonna sound silly, but it wasn't until like 2020 when I started to feel normal again after the baby loss and after breast cancer. And then when the whole world shut down,
Right.
I kinda got happy
No kidding.
because I was like, "This is what I felt." I was like, My whole world shut down a couple times over the last couple years, and now everyone is feeling that way. Everyone is freaking out." I was like, "I'm not freaked out." I was like, "This is fine. I can
Interesting.
wear masks and I can, like, whatever." I was like,
Uh-huh.
"I'm not scared." I mean, I was, like, sort of scared, but not to the extent of I think that, like, most people were.
Mhm.
I kinda was like, I does that make sense? So,
It does make sense. I mean, COVID was fine for me too. I mean, you and I mean, based on the way you're expressing yourself, I'm a shy extrovert with introvert tendencies. You know, I'm an ambivert, I guess you could say. And so COVID was great for me.
Yeah,
But here's the question. It's when you go through something like this, I mean, the loss of a child is one thing, and then cancer over and over again. How did you, and again, you don't have to go here if you don't want to, but
yeah.
talk about facing your mortality, because, we're supposed to live, 70, 80, 90. I think didn't you
Yeah.
tell me your parents are in their 90s or something? Uh,
Grandparents, yeah.
yeah. So, facing mortality at a
Yeah.
very young age, talk about that. What's that like?
I don't know if I fully accepted it and
Mhm,
faced it. I was like, "I'm surviving this."
mhm.
Like, I made that decision both times, like, "I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna survive this. I'm not dying from this. Not now." So I don't know if I really ever faced it. I mean, I do think since then, I have gone through my own trauma therapy. I do EMDR therapy,
What's that?
eye movement desensitization and reprogramming. Is that what it stands for? I might be wrong. But it's basically with eye movement, and you work through traumatic charge and traumatic events.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and so that's really been helpful for me.
You
I
mentioned
don't
the
know if
word.
I ever faced my mortality.
Okay,
I
well,
feel like I made it a party. Like, I mean, I would be in the chemo chair dancing. Like, I would stand up in my little, like, chemo cubicle, and I had, like, Dua Lipa on, and I was, like, dancing with my pull and my, like, drip. People would walk by like, "I that she's kinda weird."
but
Um,
you said something earlier that I think this epitomizes, and that's control.
yeah,
There's so much you don't have control over,
yeah,
and so I guess what you're able to identify is what you can control, and
yeah,
part of what you can control, are attitudes and behaviors that are going to have the consequence of positivity on yourself. Am I onto
yeah,
something here?
totally, 100%. I can control how I go through something, and it was really a friend of mine. um, I had just been diagnosed. My mom came. I had just spent like 5 hours at the fertility clinic because before I was gonna start chemo, they wanted to if I wanted to get eggs, like take e like do an IVF cycle. So we went through this whole like whatever, this whole meeting and process and the nurses and the thing and the shots and all the stuff. Um, PS, I'm not afraid of shots. I had to do a million freaking shots between cancer and the IVF and whatever.
Mhm.
And now I go in and when I get blood tests, they're like, it's gonna like like
It's gonna sting.
like ça pique, like it's gonna hurt, like it's gonna sting. And I'm like, it's fine. I'm
Yeah.
like, that's not we're good. I've I've had all the needles. I've had, like, big old needle, I've
Oh
had,
my
like,
god. Oh,
thick
geez.
ones, like, where they
Uh-huh.
have to, like, insert a cartridge, like, we're good. Um, yeah, and, I was I was at a really low point. I was just bawling. I was at a coffee shop with my mom and 2 friends, and I just, like, lost my shit.
Mhm.
And I was like I
Mm.
was just that kind of crying where you're like,
Can't catch
like
your
this.
breath. You can't catch your
Yeah.
breath. Yeah.
And I said I was just starting to feel better
Mm.
after the loss of Lucy. And
Mm.
I go, and now I have to go through this. I was like, I was just starting to be happy, is what I said again.
Yeah.
And she grabbed my hand, and I don't even, I have lost touch with this person, but she really helped change my life. She said, there's no reason you can't be happy also, like, right now. And I kinda was like,
Yep.
"Fuck you,"
Yeah.
but also it, like, hit me, it kind of, like, hit me where I was like I suddenly saw that it was a choice. I had a choice. I could either go through this as if it were a big wasteland, or I could walk through it and see a garden. and a lush, beautiful thing. And now I'm not trying to be like toxic positivity or something,
Mhm.
but that choice, it's not like, "Okay, great. I'm gonna just go through it. Fine." No, it was like a daily, hourly choice, right? It's like I had to make this choice many times a day. And sometimes I didn't choose happy,
Mhm.
sometimes I didn't. When I went through ovarian cancer, was probably the to be honest, my breast cancer journey was not as bad was cakewalk compared to
Mm,
the last
mm,
situation, and
mhm.
when I came back from my surgery for ovarian cancer and I was on the couch for like a month and I could barely walk, and um they had removed like 60% of my rectum. So I every time I went to the bathroom, it was the most painful thing ever. And I would cry, like I would
Oh
just
my god.
wail and wail. And that was hard. And I I hit a really low point because I was like, why am I even here? I was
Right.
like, why is this like why even why is this why like what do I even have to give right now? Because I can't give anything because I'm just I'm a shell of myself right now. And I had to slowly have faith in my process. And that's when I time became this. I can't think about next year. I can't think about I just have to think about now, today, this moment, getting through here, listening to the sounds, smelling the smells, being right here. And that really was so hard, but it passes. You know what I mean? It doesn't stay that way.
Were there any external resources that you relied on? What a lot of what you're saying it sounds to me like an echo from Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now, which is a book that we came out in
I never read
1995.
it. Do you know that? I never read that book.
I read it at the beginning of COVID, and to sum it up, he basically says we spend all our time regretting the past or
Yeah,
worrying about the future when we should be effective in the moment because that's
yeah,
all we can control. But
yeah,
it sounds like you're living what he talks about or writes about.
yeah, I feel like I learned that the hard way. But yeah, yes, I do. I get I mean, honestly, I just I had to, like, sing, I had to dance, I had to watch a lot of HGTV, like, I had to just,
Mhm.
you know, do whatever the heck I wanted. I didn't really to be honest, I didn't feel like reading.
Yeah.
I couldn't take in more information. It was like I had to let it out, you know? I had to, like, sing, I had to dance, I needed to, like, move it out. I couldn't take in. Now I'm at a place where I could, like, absorb and take in stuff, but I it was too much. It was just too much. Yeah.
Are you at a point now where you're finding that you are able to empathize and offer guidance and advice and encouragement to people who are in similar situations?
Yeah, I think so, and I don't wanna say, like, only with cancer or stuff, but, like, I have friends or people that I know that have just gone through, maybe a devastating loss or something like that, and I think I can be, um, a pillar of support because I know what it's like to go through a grief process and to feel like, "Really? They're gonna say that to me?" When people just say some crap, like,
I wanted to
I'm
ask
like
you, what kind of stuff
yeah,
do people say? They mean well, but how does it land?
right. Like, how you said, like, "Oh, you're so strong," or "You're so courageous." That's that's fine, like, and that is okay. That's
Yeah.
normal. But, I mean, when I lost Lucy, like, I had someone say, "Well, at least you can get pregnant."
God. Yeah.
Well,
And
guess what?
they
That
mean
was the
well.
last time because I then had to have my parts removed, so or right. I don't know what that person meant, or, um, like, some people are like, "Yeah, but, like, when are you gonna feel better?" You know, or, like, after a month of grieving. Um, you're like, "Really?
Yeah.
Seriously? This is not like my guinea pig that died."
Yeah, right.
You know, by the
Mm,
way.
yeah.
This is like a human. Um, yeah, or people would say, uh, "Well, you could have another, you have another, like, you could have another baby." I don't know if people said that to you, like, if you have more than 1 child, well, at least you have it's like, "Are you kidding me right now?"
Mm.
At least. I hate the at leasts.
At least. Oh, that's very good, very good. You should write an essay about at
The
leasts.
at leasts,
At
yeah.
least. Oh, man. Yeah, I can remember I was working at CNN at the time, and I was gone for a month or so, and I was on my way back to work for the first time and sitting with a friend, who I didn't really know very well, but we were on the same metro train, and she said, "Well, it's good to see that you've snapped out of it." And I go and I could see the look of horror on her face as soon as she said that, because she meant to be supportive, and it didn't come out right.
Yeah,
And
oof.
so, yeah, it's people mean well, but they're uncomfortable. They don't know what to say. And sometimes you don't have to say anything,
That's the best. The best is just don't say anything. You know what? Say, "This sucks."
right?
You know what? This is unfair and a big pile of crap that you have to go through this, and I'm
Did
just gonna sit here and not say anything, and you can cry, and you can we could just make fun of people that walk by, whatever the heck you wanna do, you know?
did people did some people who meant well over spiritualize things? God must have known, must have
Yeah, totally.
how
Yeah,
did
like,
how did that
y
go over?
there must be a right, like, or I had someone say, "I mean, did you really want to have a child? Like, maybe you didn't want." I'm like, "What?" Like, somehow my subconscious
Yeah.
fear of being a parent or something, seriously? Um, um, yeah, yeah, or, like, God has a plan for or maybe what did someone say? It was like, you, like, to the extent of, like, everything happens for a reason kind of thing, and you're like, "Okay,
Mhm.
wow. Yeah, yeah, yeah."
How were you raised spiritually, and where are you now spiritually?
I think my family, I mean, I think I was raised Catholic. I was, like, Brooklyn Catholic school. Um, my family was Catholic. Um, I Since then, I don't really practice, a denomination. I don't I'm not I'm not against them, though, but I just am like, I'm open to all things, but I don't subscribe myself to one. I guess I was, confirmed in the Catholic Church, but as an adult, I kind of moved away, and I find more spiritual connection with meditation, or sort of using my own words, or connecting with my own inner guide. That for me feels right. I
I'm not hearing atheism per se.
No, 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 no. I believe in God. I believe in God personally, or at least like a higher power, or goddess. I don't know. Maybe it's goddess. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah.
I kind of do see or feel God as both woman and man, like, to contain all of that and also nothing for
Mhm.
me. That feels right for me. But yeah, yeah,
It sounds like you're not doctrinaire because that's often what religion is. It's a set of,
yeah,
do's and don'ts, uh, and that can be putting God in a box.
right. No. I I have a spiritual teacher who is like a yoga teacher and master, and said, once, if you can't, and says often, if you can't see God in all, you can't see God at all. And I really believe that because
Wow.
I find that
I've
it
never
all
heard that. That
is,
makes a lot of sense.
yeah. Yeah, in everyone, in everything, in all the things, even, like, in the annoying person cutting you off, in the road. It's like, okay. They
Right.
also are God and, like, have God and have, like, okay, it's a leveled playing field. Um, yeah, yeah, so, I'm not saying I'm good at it, but it's definitely something that, makes me think and sort of stops me in my tracks sometimes.
So let's see. What's next is a memoir. That's what you're working on. Do you have any sense of when you're going to be done with it so that the rest of us can enjoy this or learn from it?
Oh, that's great. I don't know. Um, that's a really good question. I don't
No,
have any sense.
no
Um,
pressure.
yeah. I'm making some progress on it this summer, which is great, with my writing group, but I don't know. Yeah, maybe I should set a date, you know? Maybe I should be like,
I don't know. I mean, I think that can be a trap.
yeah,
I wouldn't do that. I think that your inner self will tell you when it's time.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so no, that's my advice, and you can do with it as you wish. But it needs to, this kind of stuff you need to sit with, and it needs to percolate. And you're getting, as long as you're getting insights, then if you rush it, I think you'll feel like you've been taking shortcuts. And
yeah,
this is something that really needs to be, and you don't have to do just one memoir. There are, you can,
totally.
you can do
Yeah,
a lot of them. Nora Ephron made a career out of it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and and you could
and
too.
many others, yeah. No, for
Exactly.
sure.
Because these essays, they're, universal themes work well. And you have what would you say is the universal theme of these essays? You said through,
Yeah.
getting through it, I suppose. Is that it?
Yeah, I really do think so. I think it's, I don't really think there's any other message. I mean, I'm not preaching. I'm really just depicting the story, and you kind of get what you get from it, but that's what is in me when I'm writing it.
Roughly how many words are each essay? Do you have a sense of that?
I think each essay is about, like, between 10 and 14 pages, like 10 and 15 pages, so, um, yeah, that's I think it's double spaced, yeah.
Those are pretty in depth.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's probably, like, maybe 4,000 right? That's, like, about 4,000-ish
You
words?
figure about, if it's double spaced, 12-point fonts, figure about 250 to 300 words to the page.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
More
So,
fun, more fun.
they're
Do you
pretty robust.
do you write them every day, or how do you approach
Yeah,
that?
so in the usually, yeah, I try to do, my friend got me on Pomodoros, like, where I'll put a timer on the there's a website, and it's like I don't know, it was created by, I think, an Italian man, I'm not sure, but you put, a Pomodoro on, it's like I think it's Pomo Timer or something like that, it's a website, and then it's 25 minutes on writing, and then a timer goes off and you have 5-minute break, and then you take a 5-minute break, and then you do another 25 minutes, and then another 5-minute break, and then you've done an hour of work, and you can,
And that works for you.
it works for me. Like, I think putting a timer and knowing that there's, okay, something
A-
keeping me in this space,
And when you're writing, are you just writing and you're not trying to be perfect or literary or
Right.
fancy?
We call it in my writers group, we call it poop on a page. Just get it out. Just get it
Yeah,
out.
I've written
Get
4 of those now. Yeah.
just, like, I think I took some, a class with Sundance, uh, for screenwriting, and they're like, because you're submitting your work in sections, and then you get feedback on each section, and they'll say, don't go back
That's
and
right. Right.
edit that first section. Just keep writing second one,
That's my
keep
advice
writing the third,
too.
like, finish it. Just
Yeah,
finish it, and then save all those notes, and in fact, you may not even like all those notes, like, circle the ones you like, and then you
right.
make a list, and you go through to revise. Don't go back and fix it. So,
Well, have you gotten
yeah.
to the point where you have done any revisions or are you just come plowing through?
Um, yes, I have, because they're, like, self-contained,
Right.
but they also do have a progression.
Mhm.
There is a progression, but they can be submitted as a uh, single essay.
Do you have a structure? Do you know where you're going? Do you know how it's gonna end?
Um, I don't know yet how it's gonna end. I do have a little bit of a structure. I learned this from my friend who calls it poop on who gave me poop on a page.
That's great.
She also inspired me to, because I was like, "Oh, I don't wanna use outlines. I just wanna be free."
Right.
And then I got in the real poop on a page. I was like, "Oh, I need some container here. So I need some shape." So, yeah, so then outline. Yes, creating an outline, and then also kind of similar to screenwriting, I really enjoy, it's the same with writing TV. You make a beat sheet. Like,
Right.
okay, act 1, like, this you have
Has to happen.
this scene,
Stuff
this
has to
scene.
happen.
Yes, right. So you kinda create that, not just the outline of the story and the larger trajectory, but also having the finer points, like your smaller beats, scene between this person, then this moment.
Do
So,
you see your story as possibly a TV series?
um, not right now. Not right now. I don't, but maybe. Oh gosh.
I do. I
Really?
do. Yeah.
I don't know if I would watch that.
You could be you.
Maybe. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Take
From
that to
your mouth, like, universe,
yeah,
let's
to the universe.
yeah.
You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Look, you and I could go on and on and on. Tell me,
Yeah.
how can people contact you?
Yeah. The
I'm assuming it's through your website there, the
Yeah. On my
Accent
website, I
Guru.
have a contact page, so you can totally, check out my website, theaccentguru.com. I have a membership on there that I work with actors who are learning an American accent, so from maybe if your first language is, anything, whatever English, and some people, maybe they're British or they're Canadian or they need to have an American accent for acting. This isn't to change anyone's identity or way of speaking, in their life, but more in, like, for a role. Yeah, it's cool. It's an ongoing membership.
So you work with people one-on-one. You're a coach as
Yeah,
well.
exactly, exactly. And yeah, and but you can contact me through there. Also, I'm on Instagram. I'm on there more than other platforms these days. But I'm not really very active on any like social media. I should be more, but yes, I'm more on
There are
Instagram,
no shoulds, ma'am. There are no shoulds.
you know.
Um,
But yeah.
Anything else? What didn't I ask that I should have?
Oh my gosh, you asked really deep, good questions.
Thank you.
Honestly, very good questions. I
My
don't know.
wife is my wife is my toughest interview. I get 3 questions with her, and the third one usually results in, "And that's all I wanna say about that."
Ah!
I'm trying to interview her for my, podcast because I think she's interesting, and
Yeah.
she actually was she was my key beta reader for Enemies Domestic, which is the book that's coming out July 4th,
Oh,
and
wow,
and
cool.
it's, the Lark in this one is pregnant. It's
Oh,
her first
wow.
it's her first day on the job as White House press secretary. The first question that she's asked comes from a Tucker Carlson type who asks, "Are you or are you not planning to abort your unborn child?" So we're going to be dealing with, she's got to live this abort or not to abort question in a toxic fishbowl, like
Yeah.
not unlike what we're living in now. We're going to deal with white Christian nationalism, um, mental illness, QAnon. It's a comedy.
Yeah.
And it couldn't come out at a better time because
Yeah, it's
uh,
perfect.
so so anyway, I started writing it when the Alito abortion decision leaked,
Mhm.
and Cindy and I had a very intense conversation, and that really then helped me get an idea for where I was going. So every chapter, I'd bring it upstairs. What do you think?
Nice.
And about the midpoint, you go, "Well, you jumped the shark now." And I know. But she really did help bring it in safe and sound, unscathed. She protected
Yeah.
my reputation. And so I'm hoping to be able to interview her on this podcast,
Yeah,
but the fact that I ask such
do it.
probing questions is probably going to be a hard no for her. But thank you for being so open and vulnerable.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for creating this space and letting me share about that stuff because I think it's important for people to see. And I was just on set with a friend of mine on his show this past week in Toronto, and someone I was like talking, and I was like, "Yeah, I went through," because there was it's a medical show, and there's medical consults. And I was like, "Yeah, I went through this and this," and they're like, "Oh my god," they're like, "What?"
Exactly. Yeah.
They're like, "You'd never know." I was like, "Well, you never know like, there's no knowing, like, there's no that looks like a cancer patient, or that looks like a you know what I mean? There's, we're all, susceptible to all of these things, and it's important for us to talk about it and to kind of not I hate the word normalize it, but just kind of have it uh, more present in our work, in our
I like that
conversations.
word. I mean, the our society, we're so good at isolating ourselves.
Yeah,
We don't want to make somebody else uncomfortable. So we don't want to share our stuff with them. We're uncomfortable. We don't want to make someone uncomfortable by asking, intrusive questions. And so often we're suffering in silence. We're in a bubble. We're not connecting with each
yeah.
other. I'll ask you one more quick question that just came to me now. Based on your experience and based on your understanding of relationships, are there any takeaways that you've learned in terms of the way we communicate with each other?
Hmm. I don't know. I mean, I get right to it. I'm not someone who's like nicey nice. Like I'm nice, but I'll be like I said, I was, on set and I'm like, yeah, well, I went through breast cancer and then this and then like I'll just like, talk about it. And they're like, "Oh." And I think sometimes people can get a little like taken aback by my brutal honesty and um sincerity with how things come out of me and that it's just right there. But I don't feel like there's time to be n- anything less than truthful and full and honest. So
So, someone listening to this or watching this, what's your suggestion for how they should go forward in terms of relating to others on a deeper level?
I think it's becoming a good listener and to hear how things come out of people, not just what is coming out of people, but how it's coming out of people, and that's gonna give you your cue as to whether you feel like you can resonate and connect with
Can
someone on a
can you
deeper
give me
level.
an example?
Yeah, I think when someone is speaking, y I mean, I think when you're listening, you'll know inside when you hear someone who is pretending, when someone is, like, kind of speaking around something or, um, making nice, you know?
Mhm,
Instead of really just being themselves, using their real voice. You know what? Similar to what we were talking about, how, like, this is more acceptable to kind of be up here and, you know, like, in this space where you can feel when someone drops into their voice, drops into their body, and is speaking truthfully and honestly. And I think you can hear the cues if someone needs to talk, needs to express, and I find when I can mirror things back to people, it helps them to go deeper. Like, "Wow, that is a really busy day that you have there.
mhm.
How is it going? How are you navigating that?"
Your little prompts, just a little.
Yeah.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Instead of it just being like, "Oh, it's been such a busy day and da da." Oh, yeah, it's like that wow, that is a busy day. Like, how are you how are you feeling? Ex How are you navigating that, you know? I know
Mm,
for me, and then I kind of sometimes bring it onto myself, like,
mhm,
I know
mhm,
I'm exhausted when I have to do that, you know?
mhm,
And I feel like that those are ways you can connect, listening and then mirroring back to people. Um, yeah. Yeah.
This is gonna be a fabulous memoir. I can't wait.
Good.
Man, oh man. This has been wonderful. I love
Thank
talking
you
to
so
you.
much. You too.
Thank you. We've been one-to-one with Suzanne Cerreta, who's a voice actor and dialect and accent coach and narrator for two of my Lark Chadwick novels. Suzanne, this has been wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.